Hello again. Steve here with a question. Is the Pope Francis, a communist slash socialist slash collectivist? Uh, I've certainly had a strong feeling that he was from the get-go. It doesn't take long listening to a few words by somebody to say, I kind of get where you're coming from here. I just watched an interesting video where he was compared to Karl Marx, and it was really quite hard to decide which. There's a bunch of quotes that were listed off. Who said them, Karl Marx or the Pope? And the only way I could guess was modern words were used where the Pope was talking, but it was exactly the same message as Karl Marx, from what I could say. And I just read this little thing here that was on the internet here. The Pope is saying that I am not a communist, just following the Gospels. The Gospels, says Pope Francis. Well, that's really not an argument, because maybe the Gospels are communist, I don't know. But it's he also says that he's simply urges activism against the structural cause of poverty and following Christian doctrine. Well, first of all, Christian doctrine is not necessarily the Gospels, because Christian doctrine is not the message of Jesus, as far as I know. A bunch of stuff that came on later, and excuse me if I've missed something, but I thought that one of the Christian doctrines was to support poverty. After all, or at least the Gospels, anyways. I think Jesus said something about it's easier for a rich man to get through the eye of a needle than for no, than for him to enter the gates of heaven, something like that. So, maybe we should be. Maybe the Pope should be supporting poverty, because that would be maybe supporting people getting to heaven. But here's another thing he said in this article. Calling for the movements of Keep Up the Fight for workers' rights, the Pope said, let's say together in our hearts, no family without a roof, no peasant farmer without land, no worker without rights, and no person without dignified labor. Well, how about freedom of choice? What if somebody decides to have undignified labor? If you're for people's rights, why not let people have undignified labor? I mean, what's dignified labor? To one person, what is dignified to the other person might be undignified. And why does everybody need a roof over their head? I mean, what if they want to live in the bush somewhere? I mean, what if a peasant farmer can buy land but doesn't want to buy land, or is lazy, or doesn't have any managerial skills and is unable to keep his finances together to be able to support the land or whatever? What about all those things, right? This stuff sounds like pure communism to me. No family without a roof, no peasant farmer without land, no worker without rights, no person without dignified labor. I mean, how do you do that, right? How do you do that without a giant welfare state, which basically just orders people around by a gun? Has this ever worked? Well, in somebody's fantasies, and I think this Pope is another one of those examples of a fantasy keeper. And but I suspect he was vetted out well for that job, and let the other hardline guy go. And since there's such a propensity for communism and socialism in the world, maybe they did the right thing by putting him in there. But I think he's just maybe well intended, but his message doesn't seem much different than Karl Marx's to me. What do you think? What do you think? You can find lots on it, anyways. And I mean, it sounds like he's for welfare, for example. So Francis has distanced himself from communism, saying that previous pronouncements on economic policy and welfare derived from church doctrine rather than leftist ideology. Well, what's the difference? Church, If church doctrine says we want welfare versus leftist ideology, what's the difference? It's still welfare. How do you get to welfare? By violence of the state. So it sounds like, he is a true communist in that respect. And if he speaks in favor of welfare, I mean, the only form of welfare that I know of, or anybody's been ever able to point out to me, institutionalized welfare, that is state welfare. And state welfare is derived from violence by thieving money from some people to give to others. And I don't know. I'm going to kind of guess that if Jesus was the character people say he wasn't in favor of that. Because there's no context to why Jesus said certain things that he said. They're just statements like, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Well, under what circumstances? Why? There's no explanation as to why. Maybe it's, because Caesar's probably going to shoot you if you don't. So sure, give him the bugger, give him whatever you can. Hold him off. He's the mafia coming after you, and just focus on something else. But from what it looks like, anyways, I know I'm babbling here a bit. It looks like to me that the Pope is just a tried and true communist / socialist, and justifies it by buttering it up with church doctrine rather than leftist ideology. But in the end, it sounds like the same damn thing. Walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and wears a funny hat. So, once again, what do you think? I think he is, and can't necessarily blame him for anything, because I don't know if he actually thought that through. Maybe he's very well intended, but we all know where good intentions can lead to. The road to hell, paved with them often. There is such a hell. But it doesn't lead to good results. At least that's what history tells us. Collectivism and so on. So, anyways, great chatting. I'll stop the babble, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.